Before we begin, please be aware that this podcast contains discussion of sensitive topics, such as abuse of minors, of vulnerable adults, and safeguarding practices. Some content may be distressing or triggering for listeners. This program is intended for an adult audience. If you or someone you know is affected by these issues, we encourage you to seek support from a trusted professional or a local support service. Listener discretion is advised.
My first diocese was in the West Indies, but the following three dioceses where I served were all beset by terrible crises of sexual abuse. I think that if they even suspected how much damage was being done, that they would not have been changing a predator from one parish to another and exposing more children to this danger. The whole area of safeguarding needs to be a huge educational effort.
Welcome to this third episode of Inside Safeguarding, the official podcast of the Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors. From Rome, I'm William Roberts from the Commission's communications team. Each month, we bring you a reflective look at the Commission's work, conversations on safeguarding as they evolve, and a deeper insight into the wider challenges facing the Church today. This month marks a turning point in the life of the Commission. After more than a decade of service, Cardinal Seán O'Malley has concluded his tenure as president. His departure signals not just a leadership change, but the end of an era that helped shape the Church's global safeguarding mission as we know it today. But we begin, as always, with a look at the latest developments. On the 5th of July, Pope Leo XIV appointed Archbishop Thibault Taverny of Chambéry as the new president of the Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors. Archbishop Verny, who has served as a member of the Commission since 2022, brings with him a record of quiet but determined safeguarding leadership. Prior to his episcopal appointment, he played a key role in developing national abuse prevention structures within the French Bishops' Conference. His nomination comes at a moment when continuity of vision is vital, and when the expectations placed upon safeguarding leadership have never been higher. The transition also invited a moment of gratitude. The Commission released a letter of thanks acknowledging Cardinal O'Malley's decade of leadership and service. The letter spoke of his integrity, humility, and prophetic voice, and honoured the pivotal role he played in embedding safeguarding within the institutional life of the Church. The letter went on to state, and I quote, "His insistence on transparency, on listening to those wounded by abuse, and on institutional courage remain the benchmarks against which our progress will be measured." End quote. Not just words of farewell then, but a call to continue the journey he helped begin. And it's in the spirit of this continuation that safeguarding work proceeds across the globe. In Argentina, intensive training sessions were recently held in the Archdiocese of La Plata, drawing together leaders from parishes, Catholic schools, and diocesan offices. Organised in collaboration with the local church and the Commission's Memoraria initiative, the sessions focused on establishing internal safeguarding protocols, policies that go beyond mere compliance and take into account the realities of parish life, cultural dynamics, and pastoral pressures. The emphasis was not just on rulemaking, but on formation, developing a shared language of protection across all levels of church ministry. Further south, Caritas Argentina has also taken steps to strengthen safeguarding in its extensive network of volunteers. In a workshop held in Buenos Aires, Caritas teams engaged in frank conversations about the risks and responsibilities involved in outreach to vulnerable populations. A significant outcome of the workshop was the formal commitment to integrate safeguarding into all stages of volunteer engagement, from recruitment and training to supervision and evaluation. As one participant noted, safeguarding is not a separate task. It's the way we carry out every task. Across the Rio de la Plata, Uruguay hosted its first ever national safeguarding meeting in the capital, Montevideo. Organized by the Episcopal Conference of Uruguay, the gathering brought together bishops, priests, religious and lay leaders to assess safeguarding structures and identify national priorities. Key topics included the handling of allegations, survivor care, and the importance of communication strategies to build public trust. The meeting was described as a historic step, small in scale but significant in intent. For a country where national coordination on this issue is new, the meeting marks an opening. Meanwhile, in Europe, the Church in the Czech Republic marked 10 years since the publication of its safeguarding guidelines. Rather than a commemorative celebration, the occasion was treated as an opportunity for rigorous self-assessment. Hosted by the Archdiocese of Prague, the anniversary gathering invited critical reflection from clergy, safeguarding officers, and survivors themselves. The mood was candid. Participants acknowledged progress, such as the growing number of diocesan safeguarding officers and greater pastoral awareness, but also pointed the enduring challenges: limited resourcing, persistent reluctance to report, and the need for better collaboration between church and civil authorities. At the heart of this gathering was a simple but searching question. Has safeguarding become part of the church's instinct? Has it moved from being a response to crisis to a foundational way of thinking and acting? That same question echoes through the Commission's leadership transition. To mark the end of his tenure, Cardinal O'Malley issued an open letter. In it, he wrote, "It has been my privilege to accompany this journey. My only desire is that the Commission continues to bring healing and hope, not only in policy, but in presence." This is a quiet message, but a powerful one. Safeguarding cannot rely on personality. It must rely on principle. The structures, the policies, the listening spaces being built today must be able to stand independent of who leads them. So, to summarize this month, the Commission enters a new phase with Archbishop Thibault Taverny appointed as its new president, as Cardinal Seán O'Malley concludes over a decade of service with quiet resolve and enduring influence. Across Latin America and Europe, we see safeguarding work taking root in schools, in parish offices, in volunteer networks, and national meetings, not through headlines, but through painstaking, deliberate progress. And we are reminded, through Cardinal O'Malley's farewell and the words of those he served alongside, that safeguarding is a long road, one built step by step, policy by policy, story by story. You're listening to Inside Safeguarding. In our next segment, I'll be speaking with Cardinal O'Malley about his legacy and the road ahead for safeguarding leadership. I'm William Roberts. Thank you for joining me. And now for the moment we've all been waiting for. In the second part of this episode of Inside Safeguarding, we're joined by none other than Cardinal Seán O'Malley. Cardinal O'Malley has served as Commission President since its founding in 2014. For over more than a decade, he has become one of the most recognizable voices in the Church's global safeguarding response, known for his direct engagement with survivors and his insistence on institutional honesty. A Capuchin friar, former Archbishop of Boston, and long-time advisor to 2 popes, Cardinal O'Malley has worked at the intersection of crisis response and reform for nearly 40 years. His leadership of the Commission has been marked by steady governance and the conviction that safeguarding is integral to the Church's mission of justice and healing. Today, he joins us to reflect on that journey, what's been achieved, what still remains, and what he hopes will guide the path forward. Cardinal Seán, welcome. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Could we start off with your personal introduction, your background, and what it was that brought you to the Commission?
Well, I suppose what brought me here was my experience as a bishop. John Paul II named me a bishop 41 years ago, and my first diocese was in the West Indies, but the following 3 dioceses where I served were all beset by terrible crisis of sexual abuse by clerics. And so when Pope Francis was elected to the Pope, he established a group of cardinals to advise him, representing the various continents and parts of the world, and I was the representative from North America, and of course this was an issue that was very important to him, and so under his direction and my encouragement, we founded the Commission for the Protection of Minors, and we once again tried to assemble people from all over the world, in particular people that had experience and commitment to this. We've always had a number of victim survivors and parents of victim survivors on the commission itself, and that has been invaluable in helping us to understand their experience and their reaction to what the church has done and has not done.
Of course. What still needs to be done? In your view, Cardinal Seán, what are the key lessons the church has internalized since, say, the early 2000s? And where have you seen these lessons internalized?
Well, the fact that the church is talking about it now, the transparency is key to dealing with this kind of problem in society and in the church. And the tendency has been that this is a taboo subject that people don't want to talk about, whether the abuse takes place in the family or in the school, but particularly in the church, because people had placed the clergy on a pedestal, and so it was even more difficult, I think, for victims to come forward when the abuser was a cleric. I think that the fact that for so long the church was not reporting these crimes and trying to resolve them internally was a terrible mistake, blunder, and what happened then when the whole crisis became public, particularly in Boston, that time, 2002. So now you have a situation where the church is dealing with these cases where the state will not intervene, will not do investigations, will not prosecute. And so all of that devolved upon as a responsibility of the church to respond to the victims and to try and achieve some sort of justice and to make sure that children were protected. I think the big shift was, placing the reputation, the patrimony, good name of the church as the priority, rather than putting the victims and their families first. And so, and I think that a lot of the terrible mistakes and crimes of the past and the cover-up was in part because people were unaware of the great damage done to the victims. I think that if they even suspected how much damage was being done, that they would not have, for instance, been changing a predator from one parish to another and exposing more children to this danger. So in the last 20, 30 years, there's been more movement. And first of all, an awareness of the great harm done to the victims, to their families, to their communities, the need to cooperate fully with the civil authorities, and the transparency to be open about this and let people know when credible accusations are made and what the process has been. One of the most important things that the church has done in the United States was calling for the review boards, and that is having lay people, experts, and victims themselves part of the process of determining what the diocesan policies need to be, and also looking at the accusations and suitability for ministry and things like that. That has been just an incredible help and such a change. And now the Commission is so involved with dealing with the churches in the Third World, where you see that the bishop alone is confronted by these problems and feels completely isolated and disoriented. And so trying to bring support and expertise at the level of leadership so that the right decisions can be made and justice is achieved and the welfare and the care of victims and survivors is the priority for the local church.
How, in your opinion, can we build a culture where safeguarding is not simply about compliance, but about embodying the church's moral and pastoral responsibility?
I think it's the whole area of safeguarding needs to be a huge educational effort on the part of the entire church, and to help people to understand what the dangers are out there and what practices can bring safety to our children, and also what is the proper response when these crimes are committed, how they can be reported and how they're dealt with. So all of these things are crucial in trying to create a culture of safeguarding if people refuse to talk about it or never hear about it.
Is it a question of handing it over to civilian authorities?
Well, I think we have to work with civilian authorities, but we also have to take our own responsibility for the transparency and for the training of our leadership, and making sure that the proper screenings are done for people that have access to children. And the Catholic Church is one of the largest purveyors of education at every level in the world, and we have millions and millions of children in our schools, and also scouting programs, catechetical instruction, and all of those involve many staff and volunteers, and we must make sure that they are properly screened and that they are properly trained. In our Catholic schools in Boston, we did also initiate an educational program for the young people so that they would know what to do if there were sexual aggression against them. And it was stunning the first year that we did it. We have 100 schools, and like 25 children came forward, and they were being abused, not by priests or teachers, but always by someone that they knew, a relative, a neighbor, a friend of their families. So an educational effort needs to be ongoing, and I think the encouraging thing is that in the states where the bishops came up with very stringent rules and protocols, that it's made a difference. That the number of cases, although cases are still coming in, practically all of them are very old cases. And it shows that if you do reporting trainings, it does make a difference. And I think the church has already, at least in the States, had a big influence. A lot of other churches and organizations have come to us to learn more about our policies and practices.
Right. And what are these recent developments? I mean, like the reforms to canon law and increased survivor consultation, what do they tell us about the church's ability to evolve in this respect?
Well, we're still evolving. At first, all of the concentration was on the abuse of minors, but more recently, the Church is focusing also on what we're calling vulnerable persons, people who are not necessarily children, but who have been seriously harmed by a religious superior, and how to deal with those cases. And I think the Church is still struggling with that. First of all, to come up with even a definition of what a vulnerable person is, and then how those cases can be handled. But that's certainly an indication of a new chapter in safeguarding that we're just beginning to deal with.
And we'll stop there, Cardinal Seán, but many thanks for joining us today and for offering such meaningful reflection. Thank you.
Delighted to, Angelo. I'm so grateful for the wonderful work of the Commission, and serving for so many years was a great privilege to me. And I'm just in admiration of the generosity, the commitment of the staff and the members of the Commission during these many years.
As part of each episode of Inside Safeguarding, we'll now take a few minutes to focus on one key theme drawn from the Commission's annual report. This month, we return to the concept introduced in the pilot episode, conversional justice, but with a little more depth. This framework, developed by the Commission over its current mandate, has now become the main high-level lens through which safeguarding work is assessed, guided, and promoted. At its core, conversional justice is about framing safeguarding not simply as compliance with procedures, but as a path of pastoral and institutional conversion. It invites the Church to embrace a deeper process of growth, one that prioritizes truth-telling, seeks justice with compassion, and strengthens care for those who have been harmed by building structures that can sustain lasting reform. Inspired by both Catholic social teaching and the evolving field of transitional justice in human rights law, the Commission shaped this pastoral theological approach to reflect the Church's unique context, grounded in the gospel and driven by pastoral responsibility. The result is a 4-pillar model: truth, justice, reparations, and institutional reform. Each of these pillars offers a way for local churches to examine where they stand and what still needs to change. Truth means more than acknowledging abuse has occurred. It involves structured and intentional truth-telling, listening to survivors, documenting failures, and naming systemic breakdowns. One example in the report highlights how some local churches have themselves collected and published specific statistical information surrounding abuse, offering factual insight on what happened and how the Church responded. Justice requires more than canonical trials. The Commission notes that survivors often experience justice systems as slow, opaque, and even re-traumatizing. True justice, the report argues, must include being heard, being accompanied, and receiving timely responses. Several dioceses are now experimenting with new models of accompaniment that place survivor well-being at the center of their justice processes. Reparations go beyond financial settlements. They include public acknowledgement, meaningful apologies, spiritual support, and community restoration. The Commission notes that in some contexts, formal gestures of solidarity, such as pastoral visits from church authorities or commemorative liturgies, have proven just as vital as financial compensation. Finally, guarantees of non-reoccurrence or institutional reform mean embedding safeguarding deeply into church structures. It's about prevention that lasts, systems that resist regression, norms that cannot be quietly ignored. Here, the Commission points to its own universal guidelines framework and the growing commitment among Episcopal conferences to adopt it. Importantly, these 4 pillars are not treated as abstract principles. They're used throughout the annual report as the basis for evaluating safeguarding performance, and they are shaped, above all, by those most directly affected, survivors. Each edition of the report includes insights from victim and survivor focus groups who are invited to reflect on what these pillars mean in real life. In future reports, each pillar will be studied in greater depth. This rotating focus allows for ongoing discernment and practical guidance for bishops, religious superiors, safeguarding officers, and the people of God. The Commission is clear. Building a culture of safeguarding is not a destination, but a journey of conversion, one that must be sustained by truth, justice, reparations, and reform together. And that brings us to the end of this third episode of Inside Safeguarding. Over the course of each month, we'll continue to follow the Commission's work, speak to those engaged in safeguarding on the ground, and take time to reflect on the wider journey towards accountability and change. Before signing off, there are a few mistakes in last month's episode that were brought to the comms team's attention that require correction, so I'll go ahead and clarify those points now. Firstly, in last month's episode, we cited as examples of countries covered in Section 1 of the pilot annual report, Brazil, Poland, the DRC, France, the Philippines, and Chile. Of those, the only entity that is in fact covered in Section 1 of the pilot report is the DRC. The other entities, so Brazil, Poland, France, Philippines, and Chile, are actually mentioned in Section 2. There's also no reference to the Union Superiors General and the International Union of Superiors General. That was an error. Secondly, when listing the dicasteries covered in Section 3 of the pilot annual report, we cited the dicastery for the doctrine of faith, the dicastery of bishops, the dicastery for the clergy, and the dicastery for evangelization, whilst in actual fact, only the dicastery for the doctrine of faith and the dicastery for the clergy were covered. And finally, the examples we gave from Brazil and the Philippines, where safeguarding training modules are being adopted for diverse cultural and linguistic contexts, were drawn from other sources, not in fact from the pilot annual report. On a personal note, it was drawn to my attention that in the last episode, I pronounced the word pastoral as pastoral, or even pastoral in some instances, which is, of course, incorrect. I'm not quite sure where I got that pronunciation idea from, but still glad to learn from the mistake, and will be sure to pronounce it correctly in the future. So, if you'd like to read more about the topics we discussed today, or explore the Commission's latest articles and the pilot annual report in full, you can visit us at tutelaminorum.org. You can also subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, where future episodes will be published regularly. Thank you for listening, and for taking the time to stay connected to these conversations. I'm William Roberts. Until next time.